Welcome to PodMind, where we explore the intersection of data science and mental health research, policy, and practice, and the incredible people driving change in this space. PodMind is brought to you by DATAMIND, the UK's hub for mental health data science. I am Marcos del Pozo Banos, Curated Mental Health Data Co-Lead for DATAMIND and Senior Lecturer on Mental Health Data Science at Swansea University Medical School. Today, we have Dr. Andrew McIntosh with us. He is Professor of Psychiatry at the Division of Psychiatry in the Centre for Clinical Brain Sciences at the University of Edinburgh. He is also lead of the Sustainability and Business Development core activity in DATAMIND and director of the UKRI Mental Health Platform. Andrew, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Marcos.
Yeah, so, I feel there's a lot to unpack here, so if that's okay, I will start with your role in DATAMIND. So you are sustainability lead for DATAMIND, which sounds like quite a challenge. So can you explain to our listeners why sustainability is such a big word and so difficult to achieve for large scale projects like DATAMIND?
Yeah, so I think that business development sustainability, when we first started with DataMind a few years ago, was a big incentive for all of the HDR UK hubs, all of the health data research UK hubs, and I think that the aim at that stage was to get to a situation where that there no longer needed to be any funding from central government. That all of the activities would be funded through interactions with industry and other partners who would pay for services, and the activities would be entirely self-supporting, and then the money that was used to fund them could be deployed elsewhere for other types of research. Now, I think it's fair to say that that hasn't been a very quick process. There's certainly been more interest from industry and from people who might be, willing to pay for services. But I think that that rate of change is quite slow, and that a lot of the investment into DataMind and into other UKRI activities that have sustainability plans is we're still going to be looking at more conventional forms of funding, whether that be from UK government or whether it's from the devolved administrations or Wellcome or from others. I think there's still going to be a kind of broad range of people who are likely to invest in DataMind and similar initiatives.
Right. So why do you think it's that investment from industry slow, or that bridge between industry and initiatives like DataMind is slow?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's when I say it's slow, I think it's going as fast as it could go in some ways. So I think what we want to do in DataMind, I think, is to not do anything with industry or with external partners that threatens the fundamental basis of public trust.
Right.
So if you're going to work in a trustworthy way that commands public confidence, that is contributing to your sustainability. Because if you lose public trust, then you're lost, I think, at the end of the day. You can't move forward. So a lot of work in DataMind 1 was around understanding the context, understanding the opinions and values of people who have personal experience of mental illness, whose data might be used by DataMind and by companies potentially that look to collaborate with DataMind, perhaps pay for services from DataMind. So a fundamental, an underpinning piece of work that needed to be done first was to establish some guidelines around the use of, around the paid use of services that DataMind could provide to industry. And so that piece of work was led by Linda and Rudolph in DataMind, and that has been brought to the stage of publication now. And I think that sets the scene really for the next 5 years, where I think we can do more to work with industry in a way that's trustworthy, involving people who have lived experience of mental illness themselves at every stage. I think those links with people who have mental illness and the people who represent them, their carers and the organisations, I think is foundational. There are some really good examples. The care.data controversy a few years ago where large investments in sharing data with industry was essentially, it came to a complete halt because it didn't come out of public trust. But I think if you're able to involve people with lived experience in those decisions, I think you're much more likely to take them with you.
Right, right. Yeah, so I think everyone will agree that trust is such a big word in this space, right?
Yeah.
So DataMind has been around for around 5 years now. We're now in phase two. So what were some key lessons learned about sustainability during phase one? I guess trust will be one of them, but anything else that you would like to highlight, maybe?
Yeah, so we made many links with industries in DataMind, um, and at our industrial forums. So we held industrial forums roughly every 6 months at that stage, and we made some great contacts with many industries.
Mhm.
Now, those industries we hope might pay for services. That was our hope. But of course, their hopes sometimes were slightly different. Their hopes, I think, were that they would provide services. And in a sense, that is a useful thing for DataMind to do. It is a useful thing for DataMind to, help, especially industries based in the UK who do ethical work around data and mental health. And helping them, I think, is a legitimate role of DataMind. It doesn't help our sustainability necessarily, but if it helps their sustainability, then I think that is, that is a positive thing. But understanding those relationships takes a bit of time in building them. So we have the issue of building trust with people who have lived experience. We also have the importance of building trust with industry, and that cuts both ways. It's our trust of them, but also their trust of us too. And building those relationships takes a bit of time. I think we did very successfully with lifestyle and wellness industries, and also with providers of data and services. We did, I think, less well with pharma and biotech. We had some initial contacts with organisations, with pharma companies, for example, but they were briefer and I think not as well sustained. And so, in this most recent set of funding for DataMind, and also augmented with funding from the platform, we've made a bigger effort to engage with pharma and biotech, and we had a industrial forum with them back in May, which was a really positive experience, a really exciting and positive experience, where we got, I think, some great engagement with industry from pharma and biotech for the first time, I think, and I feel that we have a much better chance of sustaining that aspect of our industrial relations in future than we did in the first phase of funding.
Right, right. That's nice to hear. Yeah. Um, right. So let's shift gears now a little bit and talk about the mental health platform. So if you can tell us a little bit about what it is.
Yeah, so the mental health platform links together six major investments funded by UKRI in mental health research. So one of them is the data hub, the informatics hub, DataMind, and it's essentially providing infrastructure. And the other five are research-focused, challenge-led discovery programs. They look rather like program grants, and they're from
Mhm.
around the UK, and they have links internationally as well as with in some cases with companies, and they all have their own lived experience panels. Now, the mental health platform links them together and attempts to make them larger than the sum of their parts. So we link together, we harmonize. DataMind provides the harmonization of the data, makes it available through the DataMind trusted research environment, and all of that is brought together under the umbrella of the mental health platform. Now, in future, what we're also hoping to do is make a foundation for meaningful lived experience involvement across the whole platform. So that those efforts are well underway. We bring together early career researchers with their own events, and we fund early career research fellowships through the mental health platform also. And we have a collaboration and innovation fund, which funds interactions within the mental health platform, but also between members of the mental health platform and external organisations. And that could include policymakers, the NHS. It also includes industry too. So
Mhm.
it's seeking to make the investment greater than the sum of the parts, and also to promote future translation and impact on the people who suffer from severe mental illness.
Right. And where did this idea basically come from? So what was it about the state of the field, if you want, that made you think, this is exactly what we need?
Yeah. So the call for the mental health platform, it can be traced back to UKRI, and it
Mhm.
was preceded by many years of funding programs that operated independently of each other to a large part, often who didn't share data with each other. Sometimes people would be naturally quite protective of their data,
Mm.
but it did mean that it couldn't be put together and meta-analyzed, replicate the findings could not be replicated from one study to another without there being unnecessary barriers. And it led to a promotion of competition, I think, between centres rather than bringing people together and
Right.
working with one another. So I think that the impetus for the mental health platform is around collaboration and cooperation, promoting that, promoting working with industry and with people with lived experience. UKRI also has this emphasis on addressing mechanism. So one of our focuses is more so on mechanism than it is on the later stages of the research journey. So translating research treatments into the clinic and conducting clinical trials is something that NIHR and I think in future the Office of Life Sciences will do very successfully together. We concentrate more on the early stages, on the mechanisms, understanding mental illness, also understanding the heterogeneity of mental illness and how there is within a single diagnosis, people with different etiologies are grouped together. And that's something I think particularly UKRI wants us to grapple with and to address.
Right. So I guess the mental health platform, it's we can say young still, right? It's been around for I think it's not a year yet, is it? Or
No, so it started in March 2024.
okay, time
So it's a
flies.
year, it's a year, it's a year, it's a year old. And but the coordinating, so the hubs were the first to be funded. They
Mm,
existed for a while before the mental
mm,
health
mm.
platform was funded in August. And then we started in August. We launched in September. So we've not been around a very long
A
time.
very long time. But I was going to ask you whether there is anything that comes to mind in terms of like maybe something that you didn't expect and that was a pleasant surprise, over the course of this year.
There have been many pleasant surprises. The interactions with industry we've already spoken about. That
Yeah.
has been a very pleasant surprise. Also, the eagerness of certain groups of individuals to work with us productively. So, the Medicines Discovery Catapult is an organisation. I think it's a lot of their funding. I think in the past has come from Wellcome, and they're there to drive the discovery of new medicines. And so, the people at the Medicines Discovery Catapult, particularly Sarah Emericio and Hector Patel, they have both been extremely important to the development of the ideas within the mental health platform. So that's been, one extremely pleasant surprise. The ability and the eagerness of other companies to work with us has been a pleasant surprise. The willingness of people to share data on the DATAMIND trusted research environment has been that has also been very pleasant. I don't know if it's been a surprise. I think that I did think that people would want to work together, but it's nice to see that they have. But the idea that we might now also not just transfer data to the DataMind trusted research environment, to the secure
Yeah.
environment, but also just directly capture data onto the trusted environment in the first place. So that there's no middle stage of it being collected on a number of different systems throughout the UK. I think is very welcome. I think it sets a template for how research might emerge in the future, how DataMind and how the mental health platform can shape how mental health research is conducted in the UK and possibly even more generally than that.
Right. So it definitely sounds very, very exciting. And definitely a space to keep an eye on, which especially for early career researchers and in line with what I was going to ask now, which was about the fellowships that you mentioned.
Right.
Would you be able to please expand a little bit more? Because I'm sure that when the ECRs listen and say, oh, fellowship, what?
Yes. Yeah. So we've got we have a funding stream from UKRI that enables us to spend £2 million on building capacity in mental health research, and 1.5 million of that is directly dedicated, earmarked for fellowships. So
Mm.
we recently completed our first round of fellowships, and we've supported two ECR fellows. Yet to be announced formally, but you'll be hearing about that shortly. And then we've got funding for a further three, and the further three can be anywhere between 1 and 3 years in duration. So
Mhm.
we're very excited to welcome our new ECR fellows, and we're looking forward to another round of applications shortly, where we'll appoint another three. We've learnt a lot from that process. It has given me a new and deep appreciation for UKRI and their running of fellowship schemes. It is organisationally complex, and the amount of people who are involved in those processes of seeing that they're judged fairly and interviewed fairly is has been an eye opener, but has been really positive, and I'm looking forward to the next round. I don't know when this will be going out, but in the next round, we decided that we'd make sure that the next round of fellowships, that from the off, it's clear to people that they have to be promoting collaboration across the mental health platform. And for that reason, we started a expression of interest phase for this round. So I think we don't have very long now until that closes, but people are invited to make an expression of interest, and then those are sent to the hub leads throughout the 6 hubs of the mental health platform, and then they are taken forward. They're shortlisted and taken forward to a full application where there's convergence of interest across the platform.
Great, cool. So yeah, keep an eye on that if you're an early career researcher. So I'm going to play the lazy host wildcard now, and I'm going to ask you, what is one question that would you wish people ask you about the mental health platform, but no one ever does?
You'll need to give me a minute to think about it.
Oh, yeah,
We've
absolutely.
cut out the pause. Um, yeah, well, I suppose so. My ambition for the mental health platform is, as I've said before, what is the ultimate ambition of the mental health platform? And I think it's to change the way in which mental health research is done, both
Right.
now and in the future. So I would like to see a time when researchers don't compete with each other. They share ideas, they share data, they share it openly with the public and with people who have lived experience. They allow people with lived experience to shape the agenda to make sure that it meets their priorities, and they embed a lived experience involvement in the whole process from beginning to end.
Hmm.
So I think that would, on its own, if we were sharing data, that the data was harmonized, we would have done a lot better over the last 50 years, I think, than we have done as things stand. A great template for this, I think, it comes from, it's a slightly personal example because I draw on my own personal experience of
Mhm.
research. I still work in psychiatric genetics. And I was part of many projects where we either imaged 30 people with a particular form of a gene, or we did a genetic association study. We looked to see whether, for example, depression was associated with carrying a particular gene. And we published we were pleased with ourselves at the time. We published some high impact journal papers. They might appear in journals beginning with Nature, and everybody was very pleased with themselves. The trouble is that it was productivity, but without progress. People couldn't replicate the findings, and genetics, developed quite a bad name for itself at the time because people wouldn't work with each other. And then came consortia. We agreed that we would share data with each other, that we would be more open, that we would collect data of the same type, we would harmonize our data. And it was only really through that we made progress. And now I think there's barely a more productive and perhaps no more impactful field than that of psychiatric genetics that has made exponential improvements in its number of discoveries, and it is a ripe area for collaboration and for treatment development. So, we've learned a lot about environmental causes of mental disorder, mental illness through the discovery of genetic factors. So I think that, and there'll be other examples of this, it's not just genetics, but I think that provides a really positive template for us to follow in the footsteps of those initiatives and to build towards something similar. But instead of it being for genetics, for it to be the whole of mental health.
Mm. So thank you. That's a really beautiful story about, that acts as a testament to what collaboration between researchers can achieve. So that's great. So I'm afraid we're starting to run out of time, but I wouldn't want to conclude without at least touching a little bit more on your own research, which you have just mentioned now. So I believe your work focuses on understanding the causes and consequences of depression using a range of data, like you mentioned, including genetics, but also electronic health records, clinical and cognitive measurements, and brain imaging. Uh, so I guess I'm going to ask you to pick your favorite child here. So which of these modalities do you believe has are the ones that you perhaps like to work with the most and has the strongest potential to drive discovery going forward? I guess
Yeah.
maybe it's again genetics, but yeah.
Well, it's so before you so when people have asked me that question in the past, I've sometimes said genetics. But the truth is, I don't know what technology will lead to improvements for people with mental illness.
Mm.
I think it's I don't you know I think it would be arrogant of me to say I think genetics will be the technique that will lead. I don't know. Maybe it'll be clinical trials. Maybe it will be imaging. Maybe it'll be data linkage. Maybe there'll be some of these things are methods and some are approaches. Some people focus on particular conditions. Some people focus on ignoring the conditions and the limitations of the diagnosis and going very broad. I don't know what the right way forward is going to be. I focused on genetics in my own research primarily because, whilst everything else can be something might be associated with a mental illness, you don't often know if it's a cause or not.
Mm.
So my interest in genetics is driven by the fact that if you discover that a gene is associated or a genetic variant is associated with a mental illness, it provides you with information about cause. And because your genetic code is fixed from birth, the fact that you have an illness or have been treated for it can't be influenced by the treatment or the illness. The genetic stays fixed. Now, I have to say, I'm not really interested in genetics for its own sake. I'm interested in genetics and what can be used as a tool. And I think genetics can be quite a powerful tool for us to understand the environment, for us to understand how treatment works, for us to understand how social factors influence the outcome of people with severe mental illness, for example. So
Mm.
I don't see it as kind of having a preeminent role, but I do see it as a really important tool through which we can accelerate research across just about every discipline. So I see it as having that sort of cross-cutting role
Right.
across
Across all
a
the other.
variety of different approaches.
Right, right. And so I guess if you can tell us, like, what is it that you're working on right now? Something that you can tell us about, maybe like, what is the new exciting paper that is going to come out soon, or that maybe has been published very recently?
Yeah. So there's in the field of genetics and in my own research area,
Hmm.
I think some of the most interesting things that have happened in the last few years have been about representation of global populations. So it's really exciting. We published a paper in Cell earlier this year
Right.
looking at a genetic study of people with depression, but instead of it just including white people of European origin, it included all major ancestry groups and
Mm.
also people who belong to no ancestry group, people who are said to be admixed and have parents perhaps of different backgrounds. So that really excites me. It excites me because, well, first of all, I'm amazed that we spent so long looking at white European populations, and I think we'll look back and think, what were we doing? I mean, white European populations are that they are the minority of the globe, and we speak in terms of treatments that help global conditions like depression, schizophrenia, or bipolar disorder. But how can you do that if you don't do research on the global population? So a lot has been achieved in the last couple of years by looking at global populations, but there is still a fly in that ointment, and that's that we usually look at other ancestry groups. We usually look at people of African origin, Asian
Mhm.
origin, but we look at them often in the UK and North America. We don't look at them in their ancestral continents of of original origin. So, there could be some things that are really quite different there. So,
Mm.
do you have the same experience as an African growing up in London, or as an African growing up in, say, Abuja in Nigeria? I am guessing, and I think there's some evidence to support this, that those experiences are really very different, and that the types of risk factor, the types of things that will make mental illness better or worse, I think, might depend somewhat on whether you're, a person who's, from continental Africa or based in the UK. Like I say, there's some evidence for this, but I think, moving away from thinking in terms of people's the population that's immediately outside of your university or European populations studied from the context of, again, a UK organization, to thinking globally about global populations and people from different continents of different ancestries, I think it will be really important in future.
Right. So I guess this is also tied with what you were saying earlier about collaboration. And the challenge here would be, right, it's not just about reaching the usual suspects in terms of the different countries or different European countries, but also try to engage with middle and low income countries so that we have a fair representation of the global stage, right? Which I suppose
Yes.
it's a whole different level of challenge in terms of achieving that. I don't know if you have any experience on that regard, but yeah.
I've got some experience of working with colleagues from King's, Catherine Lewis from King's, and also with colleagues in Uganda, Malawi, Nigeria, and Ethiopia, and South Africa. And it's people in those countries are very keen to work with collaborate with us in the UK, and we are very keen to collaborate with them. It is a rapidly accelerating field, both research in general, but also specifically in genomics in many of those countries. And interestingly, so for example, in Malawi, it's there's some advantages to working with individuals in Malawi that are a little bit unexpected. So in the UK, we have this long history of working with paper records
Mhm.
and about working in very analog health systems. But in Malawi, they've not had the stage of working with those kind of very mature health systems and unlearning some of the things that we've had to unlearn in this country as we move towards a more digital infrastructure. Most people in Malawi have access to a mobile phone. There's fantastic electronic research infrastructure and growing health infrastructure in those countries too. There's such a great degree of promise, I think, of missing out some of the earlier missteps that we've made in the UK and moving towards something that is more digital right from the very outset.
Right, right. So yeah, really interesting, really interesting. Um, so I'm afraid we have to conclude, but I would like to get some final thoughts from you uh, with the early career researchers in mind, and is what advice would you give to your younger self at the start of your career?
I, I don't know what advice I could have given to myself that I would have listened to. Uh, but I went through a number of different approaches and a number of different disciplines before settling on something. And I think having the freedom, I think, to try out a few things, I think is something that you should take time to do, to read widely, experience a variety of techniques. And I found that there were particular things that gelled with me that really appealed to something inside of me that then meant that I could really commit to them and really go in deep, if you see what I mean. So I think that enjoying the freedom and foolishness of being young and trying out different things, I think
Right,
would be
good.
really
A little bit of exploration. Yes.
yeah.
Right. So thank you very much, Andrew. It has been a
Thank you,
really,
Marcus.
really, really fascinating conversation. Um, So for the listeners, if you are inspired by Andrew's story and want to learn more about his work on DataMind and the mental health platform and his work outside these two also on research, so we will provide some links in the caption. And yeah, again, thank you very much, Andrew. And I guess we'll repeat it sometime and then focus on your research and spend more time talking about that.
Cheerio. Thanks very much, Marcus.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you.